வணக்கம். இந்த இனிய மாலை பொழுதினிலே நியூ ஜெர்சி தமிழ் பேரவையின் அறிவரங்கம் வழங்கும் கல்லூரி பயணம் என்ற சிறப்பு நிகழ்ச்சியில் கலந்து கொள்ள வந்திருக்கும் அனைவருக்கும் இரு கை கூப்பி வணங்கி வரவேற்கிறோம். இந்த நிகழ்ச்சியில் சொல்யூஷன் பிரெப் நியூ ஜெர்சியின் முதன்மை பயிற்றுவிப்பாளர் எரிக் கின்ஸ்பர்க் சிறப்பு விருந்தினராக கலந்து கொண்டு உரையாட இருக்கிறார். அனைவரும் கலந்து கொண்டு இந்த நிகழ்ச்சியின் மூலம் பயன்பெறுமாறு கேட்டுக்கொள்கிறோம். Good evening and welcome to New Jersey Tamil Peravai's Knowledge Forum presenting College Journey, a special webinar on college admissions, tests and admission process. Peravai has been hosting many such informative sessions throughout every year. This webinar focuses on SAT, ACT prep, college admissions, question and answers and more. This evening we have our keynote speaker, Eric Ginsberg, Master Tutor from Solution Prep. Eric has been teaching SAT and ACT and providing college counseling since 1998. He has a degree in music and is a financial aid expert. He contributed to the bestsellers Cracking the SAT, Crash Course for SAT, and 11 practice tests for SAT and PSAT. We also have some parents who will be sharing their experience about college admission process. So, let's get started with this program and over to Eric Ginsberg.
Hello, thank you so much. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Eric Ginsberg. I am, as you said, a master tutor at Solution Prep, where we do things like SAT and ACT prep, as well as college admissions counseling. I help people prepare for these important tests. I help people with things like their college applications and their essays and deciding which colleges are right for them and their financial aid applications and all other manner of things. I am here tonight to talk to you guys about that process. Sounds like somebody's mic might be on. We're getting a lot of, oh, boom, got it. All right, there we go. So feel free to unmute yourself anytime, but it was a little feedback. So today I want to talk to you guys about the 5 things colleges look for when they decide which students to accept. And the first thing that colleges look at, obviously, is students' grades in high school. Everybody knows you have to have good grades in school. But good grades is very relative because of 2 big things. One is a very real thing called grade inflation, which is where some schools are giving out slightly easier grades. And that's very unfair to students who have to work at much more rigorous of a level at more challenging schools to get the exact same grades. Another thing that can make grades different from one school to the next or from one student to the next is what level of class they're in, because there are a lot of different levels of classes. There's, you know, the regular level, some high schools call college prep. There's honors level classes, and then there are AP classes, advanced placement classes, or at some schools IB, International Baccalaureate, a different company that does the same thing that AP classes do. And let me tell you, every student who's getting an A thinks they belong at the top colleges. But some students are getting A's at the regular level classes. Some students are getting A's at the honors level classes. And some students are getting A's at the AP level classes. Meanwhile, the students getting B's in this level feel like they're not doing well enough. And the students getting B's at this level feel like, I'm pretty good, I'm close enough. And they have very different perspectives on their grade performance. Some schools try to level this out with something called class rank. Other schools try not to put too much pressure on students by not offering class rank. So it can be an interesting mix, and colleges have to sort all this information out. And one way they try to sort out One way that colleges try to figure this out by comparing students with all different, with very similar GPAs at all different schools is the second thing colleges look for, and that is the SAT and the ACT. Now, colleges try to use the SAT and the ACT, which are, again, 2 competing brands that do the exact same thing. Colleges try to treat these tests like they are the great equalizer, like they are fair and equal to everyone, but they are not. They are not fair to everyone. They are not equal to everyone. Albert Einstein is quoted as saying, everyone is a genius, but if a fish judges itself on its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it is dumb. And some of you guys have fish for kids, and some of you guys have monkeys for kids, and some of you guys have everything in between, and they all have their own unique strengths and their own unique challenges. And the tests like the SAT and the ACT only measure a very small range. And so it is, if I'm being honest, very unfair that colleges use these as their college admissions metric, and yet in many cases they do. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Before I get into the other three things, I want to explain a little bit about the SAT and the ACT, which is, first of all, they are like Coke and Pepsi. They are two different companies that do relatively the same thing with these tests. In some states, like New Jersey and Connecticut and Michigan, the SAT is very popular and most students take the SAT. In other states like North Carolina and Alabama and Wyoming, everyone takes the ACT. The ACT is much more popular. It's just a regional thing, and colleges don't care what state you're from, and colleges just want the best students who can succeed at their colleges, and so they don't care which test you submit. Generally speaking, you can find both of these tests administered all across New Jersey. You'll probably find more SAT testing centers because it's more popular, but you will find plenty of ACT testing centers as well. They're very similar tests. In fact, they're nearly identical, especially since the tests changed in 2016, the SAT a lot, the ACT a little, and they're nearly identical. The biggest difference between the SAT and the ACT is that the SAT gives you more time per question, but more involved questions. The students have to think their way through, whereas the ACT generally gives you less time per question, but more straightforward, direct questions. Some students are better when they have more time. Some students are better when the questions have fewer steps and are more straightforward. And which will your student be? We don't know. We don't know until they get ready for these tests and they take these tests. And that's why I always encourage my students to take both the SAT and the ACT. I'm always prepping my students for both at the same time. Some parents call me and they say, we just want to focus on this, or we just want to focus on that, either because we've heard this test is the easier one. Neither one is the easier one. If one was easier, I would just teach that. Maybe they say, well, my student is better at science, and I hear the ACT has science and the SAT doesn't, so I just want to do the ACT. Or my student's not good at science, so I just want to do the SAT. Well, let me assure you, neither test has science and both tests have science. What do I mean? I mean, the ACT does have a section that they've labeled the science section, but both tests are testing you on, can you pull information out of data, graphs, charts, and answer questions about that. The difference is the ACT gives you a section just for that, and the SAT gives you that, but they sprinkle it all throughout the test. So a little in the reading, a little in the writing, a little in the math, and the ACT just puts it all together in one section that they call science. But it's not testing the student's knowledge on things like biology or chemistry or physics, the way both tests' math sections are testing your knowledge on things like algebra and geometry and arithmetic. So they're nearly identical tests. They have the same content. They just arrange it a little differently. But some parents say, Eric, I just want to focus on this test and not that test because I had my student take a test to see which test they were better at, so they would only have to take one test. Wait, so you took a test to only take one test. So you took two tests. So you're better off, if you're going to take two tests, taking the SAT and the ACT and finding out which one are you really better at. And most importantly, we never want students to take those tests cold, which means without any prep. We want students to learn what they're doing and then go take those tests. There is something called the PSAT, which is the practice SAT or the pre-SAT, which is a great test for 10th and 11th graders to take in their high school. It's coming up at most schools on October 13th. The school will automatically sign them up for it at most high schools. And they'll take that. They're going to get those scores around December 6th or 7th. They haven't announced which date yet, but it's one of those two. And then you're going to find out, what are their scores. But too many parents wait for the PSAT scores to make a decision. And the problem is there are 7 SATs every school year, 7 ACTs every school year for a total of 14 tests. And if you wait until that December 6th or 7th to get your PSAT scores, you've already missed 7 of those 14 tests. And the goal is to get done with SAT and ACT testing during junior year. 11th grade is testing year. So we always want to help our students get done with their testing by the end of junior year. That way they have the summer going into senior year to work on other tasks like college applications and essays and so much more we're going to talk about. So keep that timeline in mind when I say the December SAT and December ACT is the last best first round of testing for juniors. Because if they take the December round of testing, if they haven't already started, if they take the December round of testing, then they can take the February ACT and or March SAT as their second test. And if they need a third test, they can test again in April or May for ACT or SAT, June for either the SAT or the ACT, because ideally students want to take these tests at least 2 times, maybe 3 if they need it. 4 times is just punishing yourself, and I don't recommend that. So the reason why it's to your benefit to take these tests 2, maybe 3 times is because most colleges will use something called a super score, which is where they put together your best math and your best reading, and they put them together, even if they're from different dates, or in the case of the ACT, your best English, your best reading, your best science, your best math, even if they're from different dates. And they give students the benefit of the doubt that the day they did their best is what they're really capable of. And that's to your advantage. And it's very normal to see a student take the SAT or the ACT one day and have their scores be like this, and then the next day and see their scores do like that. It's very normal. And we see it all the time after students take our class on their first test. They might go up a lot in one subject and not in the other, but then they test again and the other goes up and this one goes down. And that's why colleges super score. It's all part of the game, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's all part of the process. So over 90% of colleges will super score the SAT. So about 10% don't. They just want your best single day. And over 2/3 of colleges will super score your ACT. And then again, the other, 30% or so. And the number of schools super scoring the ACT is growing rapidly. So it's very likely that when your students apply to college, most or all of their colleges will super score the SAT, and many or most of their colleges will super score the ACT. And if students take both, because they're 2 separate companies, you only have to send the better one. So if your student is really better at the SAT than the ACT or vice versa, just pay one company to send your best scores. All right. So that said, one last piece about, getting ready for these tests is you take the PSAT cold. That's your baseline. You put that score in your pocket and then you measure your progress from there. But you don't want to take a real SAT or real ACT cold with no practice. And one big mistake I see parents and students make before they start a program like my students do is I see them just take a ton of practice tests. They buy a book and they just have their kids sit down and take practice tests. Well, if they don't know what they're doing, if they don't have a strategy, practicing over and over and over again with, whatever they figure out is not a good thing. What you want is for them to learn how to do it and then practice that. Practice those strategies, practice those skills, because the students who come to me after they've already taken 10 or 20 practice tests, it is much harder for them to learn new strategies from the ones they've kind of figured out for themselves because they're so practiced at, for lack of a better word, bad strategies. Because the ones who call me, those, what they figured out on their own didn't really work. So you want to make sure that whatever your student is doing, whatever practice they're doing, they're learning how to take these tests before they practice like crazy, which is good to do when it's the right time. So that's a little bit about the SAT and the ACT. I told you there are 5 things. We talked a little bit about grades. We talked a lot a bit about the SAT and the ACT. I want to talk to you guys about the next thing that colleges look at when they choose which students to accept, and that is their extracurricular activities. Now, extracurricular activities can include things like sports, things like clubs, things like community service, things like artistic pursuits, music, acting, dancing, painting, sculpting, photography. Extracurricular activities can include things like work experience, if your students have had a job, can include things like travel experience, if your students have been someplace neat. It includes things like maybe your student is involved in some kind of activity outside of school, like scouts, or they take lessons for something. Maybe they take, music lessons, or they go to coding classes, or, whatever it is they're interested in outside of school. And then colleges put all that stuff together, and that is part of what makes them decide to pick a student. So why would they do that? Why do they care? And what should your students do to make that category look good? So first of all, colleges always want to see at least 2, maybe 3 years or more of an activity. So students who just add a bunch of activities in 12th grade at the last minute before they apply, that does not look good. So for that reason, those of you who have students who are in 9th grade or younger, now is the time to let them figure out what they're interested in. Let them try a lot of things and see what they're really passionate about. And maybe your students have been involved in activities for, years up until this point, and it may be time to have some really genuine conversations about which activities are your students doing since they were young that they still love to do and should continue pursuing, and which things they've been doing since they were young were fun when they were young, but now they're ready to move on to other activities. And they want to free up their time by dropping some activities from when they were young to have more time to explore their developing interests. That way, if they start those activities in 8th and 9th grade, they can find the things they really love and then pursue them at a deeper level in 10th grade and beyond to create that good track record of commitment and dedication so colleges can see what they're really passionate about, because it is a big mistake, a big myth, in fact, that colleges are looking for the most well-rounded students. So many students, so many parents think if my student does a little bit of everything, that's what colleges want, and that is not what colleges want. Colleges want not the most well-rounded individual students who've dabbled in a little bit of everything, but they want the most well-rounded student body comprised of students individually who are passionate about individual things. So if your student is passionate about soccer, if your student is passionate about violin, if your student is passionate about helping students with special needs, or about dance, or about student government, these things are great, and they don't need to do a million little things that distract them from their passion. What they need to do is delve deeper into their passion. So for those of you with 10th and 11th graders, it is time to hone in on those passions. If your student loves soccer, don't just play soccer. Volunteer with the younger kids with soccer. Volunteer with kids with special needs with soccer. Get a job reffing soccer games. All right, maybe get a job working at a soccer camp. Find activities that check those other boxes within your passion to explore your passion on a more well-rounded level, but not dabbling in a little bit of everything, right? And it's okay to have more than one passion. 2 or 3 is fine, but your student does not have 20 different passions. So I have a student I worked with yesterday, so he's on my mind right now, but his passion is music. And so he's got the marching band and the jazz band and the woodwind choir, and he's got the, summer program he does with music and the lessons he gives with music on his resume. And he has some other things too, but you can really tell by looking at his resume of extracurricular activities that he is a passionate person. Now, I told you what to do. Then I have to tell you why. Why do we do it like that? Why do colleges care about this thing? these things. So colleges have a lot of different statistics you can find out on their website. And one of their statistics is something called retention. Retention is what percent of freshmen return as sophomores. And colleges care a great deal about having a high retention rate. So they want the students who start there to stay there, because anybody in business can tell you it is far cheaper to keep a customer than to get a new customer. And colleges spend a lot of money to recruit students, to recruit your student, with things like open houses and tours and buying your information off of a list and mailing you things and putting these things together. It costs a lot of money to put up billboards and signs on a bus. And if they've spent that money to get your student to come to their college, they don't want to spend that money twice to replace your student with a transfer student when your student leaves, because they realize after a semester or two, you know what, I'm not happy here. I don't like it. So they want to retain students. So what do these two conversations have to do with each other? Is that students who are passionate in extracurricular activities will pursue those activities on that college campus and be an active part of that college community. And when your student is involved in activities at college, not just going to college, not just going to classes and then coming back to their dorm and powering down for the night, but being involved, making friends, forming relationships, your student is more likely to come back next year. And your student is going to encourage other students to come back next year because your student has made friendships with those other students. And your student is one of the reasons those students want to come back to spend more time with your student, with your sons and your daughters. So that is one of the main reasons why things like extracurricular activities matter to colleges, because it gives them a very good idea of who's going to be active on their college campus. Very important. And, you know, within those categories, things like leadership, like if your student was, you know, an officer of a club, a captain of a team, maybe founded a club, that tells the college that there will be someone to take on leadership responsibilities in the activities their college has to offer for students who will be passing down those reins when they graduate, and those activities will continue because of your student. So that's why these activities really matter to them for those reasons. So I told you there are 5 things. We talked about grades. We talked about the SAT and the ACT. We talked about extracurricular activities. Then there's something called demonstrated interest. Demonstrated interest is how seriously a college thinks your student is interested in their school. So understand, colleges understand that your student is applying to not just one school. Your student will apply to somewhere between 5 and 10, maybe 15, if some of them are very competitive colleges. But more than 15, you're kind of wasting your time. You're not equally interested in 20 or 30 colleges. And if you are, it's time to do some more research and really get down to how these schools are different and what you like or don't like about a college. But colleges understand that your student will apply to more than one school. But if the college accepts you, or accepts your student, they want your student to accept them back. And that is another statistic that colleges track and you can find on their website. This one is called yield, Y-I-E-L-D, yield. So yield is the percent of students the college accepts that accepts them back. And a college is always trying to predict their yield based on things like historical data from past years and current trends. And they're always trying to pick students who will pick them back, because let's do some easy math. Let's say a college has 5,000 seats to fill. And let's say a college expects a 50% yield. That means the college has to accept 10,000 students. 50% will accept, 5,000 will come, and they will fill their class. But if they get that math wrong and only 40% accept, now only 4,000 students came and they do not have enough students and they lose money. Never forget, colleges are businesses and they're in business to make money and they want yours. So When colleges look at demonstrated interest, the fourth thing we're talking about today, they're looking at how seriously a student wants to go to their college, because they want to know, will this student positively contribute toward their yield? If they pick you, will you pick them back? So things that can improve demonstrated interest, things that can let a college know you're really interested in their school, are things like visiting the school. These days that can be hard. So if you can't go for an in-person tour, a virtual tour that is live where you have to log in, like you guys are logged in right now. I can see who's here. I can see Bala and Bhaskar, and I can see Devi, and I can see Eben, and I can see Kala, and I can see Meg, and I can see you here. And so I know you're here, and colleges track that information. They want to know, did you come? And so that can improve your chances of getting in. If a college is sending an admissions person to your high school, which schools are back to doing this year, attending those meetings to meet the admissions person can demonstrate interest. If a college is offering summer classes, taking summer classes about their college can demonstrate interest. Other things that demonstrate interest, if a college is tracking big data, opening their emails, clicking on the links in their emails, spending time on their website, if they're using that stuff, demonstrates interest. So these are all things that we encourage students to pursue. And then something that really helps with demonstrated interest is many colleges ask you to write an essay to get into their school. And sure. There's one big essay that every college, well, most colleges on something called the Common Application or the Common App accept. But the biggest misunderstanding about that essay, most students tell me, well, I don't need help because my essay is finished. There are so many essays that other colleges, more competitive colleges, will ask a student to write. I have some students applying for very competitive schools who have colleges asking them to write 3 essays, 5 essays, 10 essays. So yes, there is like the one big essay you write once and send to every school on your list if they're on the Common Application. But then each school within the application can also ask you, why are you interested in your major? Or why are you interested in attending our college? And these essays specifically are really great opportunities for students to demonstrate their interest and talk about what about the college really interests them, or what specific program a college has for their major that draws them to this college instead of other colleges where the program maybe isn't as good. And a mistake students make is they write, well, I hear it has a strong program and it's listed very highly. Yeah. They know that stuff. Don't waste their time with things they already know. Tell them what about their program specifically interests you. Name the lab where you're going to get to do exciting research. Name the professor whose book you read or whose TED Talk you watched. Explain what about their major is unique and different, whether it's the co-op or the fact that you can start doing research freshman year or the fact that you have access to graduate level classes senior year. Those things show them that you have done the reading, that you are specifically knowledgeable about their college, and that you, with all that knowledge, said, and it's the place where I want to go to school. Somebody who said, I hear it's good, is not demonstrating their specific interest. So demonstrated interest can be a big one, and those are just some ways to demonstrate your interest. Now, I told you there are 5 things. We talked about grades. We talked about the SAT and the ACT. We talked about your extracurricular activities. We talked about demonstrated interest. But the 5th thing colleges are looking for is something they call a hook. A hook is something that makes your student stand out as different, unique, special, and better than other students applying. Sure, lots of students have good grades. Lots of students have good scores, but your student has something different and special. Your student has a hook, and you can turn extracurricular activities into a hook. You can turn demonstrated interest into a hook. Other hooks that you may just naturally have are things like maybe you have a parent or sibling or grandparent who went to that college. You have legacy status. That can be a hook for some schools. Maybe you'll be a first-generation college student and you have parents who did not complete college. That is a hook. Maybe you're a student who comes from an economically disadvantaged background, but has still managed to pursue all of these other great things. That can be a hook. All right. But the way I think about a hook, the way I think about all this stuff really is what most parents and students get wrong about the college admissions process. They think if you get good grades and you get good scores, you're in. And that's it. But that's not it, because there are way more students with great grades and great scores than there are available seats. Let me tell you, there are about 25,000 high schools in America. And every high school has a valedictorian who's number one in their class. And every valedictorian thinks, I should go to Harvard or I should go to MIT. Well, let me tell you, there are not enough seats in the freshman class of those schools to accept every valedictorian. And they don't only want valedictorians. They want salutatorians and students in the top 5% and students who have other great hooks. Another hook could be things like athletics. If your student is a great athlete, that can be a hook. But colleges look at all this information and they need to pick the right students. I had a conversation a few weeks ago with a mother who was from India originally. And her student had a 34 out of 36 on the ACT, and she wanted to get tutoring. And I said, you don't need tutoring. With a 34 out of 36, your student has the scores for any college in the country. No college is going to look at a score that high and say, it's not perfect, not good enough. Get rid of that kid. No. Grades and scores of those 5 things, grades and scores are what qualify a student for the college. So you have to have enough of a GPA, high enough. You have to have enough challenging classes, academically rigorous course load with things like honors and AP classes and high marks in your APs. You have to have a high enough SAT or ACT. But it does not have to be perfect, and you should not torture your students with the drive for perfection. Because what this parent told me, she said, well, I know my student has a 34 out of 36, but I've heard from other parents that for Indian students, for Chinese students, for Asian students, she said, you have to have a higher score. And I said, that is not true. Colleges are not saying students of this ethnicity need something higher. What they're saying is we want all 5 categories. And I understand that in India and in China and in South Korea, the way the college admissions process works is it's almost entirely test driven. And so parents who went through the college admissions process in those countries get very focused on testing. And they very often have students who neglect those other categories, who don't have all the extracurricular activities, who don't have passion, who don't have great essays, who don't have a hook, because they spent so much of their time taking 10 and 20 and 30 practice tests that they didn't put their time into all the other things. So the way I envision college admissions is like this. I picture in my head, I picture a nightclub, and there's a line of people out front and they all want to get into the nightclub. And there's a bouncer at front who's checking things like their grades and their scores. And they're deciding you get in or you don't get in. But people think once they have grades and scores, I'm in. And that's not true. Because once you get into the nightclub, now there is a stage inside that nightclub. And that nightclub is full of students who have great grades and great scores, who all qualify to get in. But now sitting on the stage, I picture a bunch of chairs and I picture a bunch of college admissions officers at different colleges who are looking out at the crowd of eligible students who were able to get into the nightclub, who are qualified. And they're deciding, who do we pick from these eligible students to come up on stage to be chosen for admission into our college? All right. And what they do is they look for what I think of as the shiniest students. So when you have extracurricular activities, gold star. When you have leadership experience, gold star. Sports, gold star. Clubs, gold star. Great grades, gold star. Maybe a big gold star. Great scores, maybe a bigger gold star. You have family who went here, who goes here, gold star, gold star, gold star, gold star. And the point of the college admissions process is to check as many of those boxes, get as many gold stars as you can, so that when these college admissions people are sitting on the stage, looking out at this sea of eligible, qualified students, your student is among the shiniest. Well, of course I need that student. That student is very shiny. You come up here, you come up on stage, we want you. And they keep going through the room, they pick the shiniest students. That's how I think about this process. And that's how you can think about this process in terms of all the different things that go into this process that we call college admissions. So I'll wrap that up with a bow and I'll turn it over to questions. Who has questions? Who'd like to ask me things? I will, of course, ask the moderator what is the best way for parents to ask these questions. But I will, before I start answering questions, I will tell you guys that if you do have questions that I don't get to today, I'm going to put my email address right here in the chat, questions@solutionprep.com. So if you think of something after we log off, if I don't get to your question, if you think of it tomorrow, certainly shoot me an email. I'm always happy to chat with you. So, all right, let's open it up to questions. And can I please ask our host, who thank you so much for having me, what is the best way for people to pose their questions? I'll let you explain that.
Thanks, Eric. This is very, very informative, and I'm sure it answered a lot of questions for us and definitely would have triggered a lot of new questions. For the people in the Zoom room, so your options are you can raise your hand and we will let you ask the question directly to Eric. Or if you're watching in YouTube or in Facebook, you can type it in there, your questions, and our members will read it out for you and they're going to get your answers to Eric. And as we have only like 15 minutes time, like for Q&A session, and if you have any more questions, you can reach out to Eric at questions@solutionprep.com. So we already have like a couple of questions in our chat window here in Zoom, and people can raise your hands and then we can go one at a time. So we have a question from Ilango Krishnan. Will creating a small business impact a college admission?
Sure, creating a small business is something you can do as an extracurricular activity. It can be something you can develop into a hook. And, you know, your essays, your college application essays, which many times there are many to write from more competitive colleges, are your opportunity to discuss the things that are most important to you and to develop a hook. So something like that, sure, you know, it's not about which activity you do. It's about how you explore that activity. So creating a small business can be just as good as playing volleyball if you can write a great essay about it, and if you can speak about it passionately, and if you engage with your community through that activity. I'll give you an example. I had a student once who started a small business. She built her own online store. And she posted things on Instagram, and she sold all kinds of clothes. She would make the clothes, she would sell the clothes, and then she started making and selling vases, I think. And, you know, that was a business and that was exciting. And that was a way for her to express her artistic nature and to generate revenue. I had another student who she told me that she had made an online store. I said, cool, what did you do? She said, well, my mom incorporated it. I said, okay, but what did you do? Well, my mom built a website. Okay, but what did you do? And everything I asked her, well, my mom did this and my mom did that, because her mom thought it would look good on a college application. So the best thing to do is not what you think colleges are looking for. It's encouraging your students to explore what they're passionate about and be active in those things, whatever that thing is.
Oh, thanks, Eric. We have a question from Dharmendra. Does working on a book and getting it published count as an extracurricular activity?
Absolutely. Anything your student does that is of note can be great, as long as it's something that they themselves are doing. And yes, I have a student who's going to MIT now who wrote a book. And if you read that book carefully, there's a little shop called Ginsberg something or other where she gave us a little shout out. And that was very sweet. But yes, of course, that can help. If it's a good book, sure, anything is good.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. We have a question from Ala. Like she raised her hand. Question from Ala. Like, you want to talk?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, is these tips only applicable for students based on US, or it will be applicable for students based on other countries as well? The 5 tips which you have given for the SAT and the college looking for all that.
Excellent question. So generally speaking, I'm an expert at college admissions in America. I'm coming to you live from my center in East Brunswick, New Jersey right now. So that's generally what I'm an expert in. And of course, everything can be different in different countries, especially in countries with free public education where things can be different. So I'm not very knowledgeable in that. But if you're asking me, what about students who are US citizens versus students who are applying as international students, as long as they're applying to US colleges, yes, these things hold true.
Yeah, that's what my question. You answered my, if I'm an Indian student, I'm applying for a US based college. So this will be still applicable, right?
Absolutely. All applicants coming in are being reviewed, looked at in the same way. I had a parent of a couple of my students over the years, because we work with families over years, but I had a parent who, she does college admissions for NYU. That's her job. And specifically, her job is recruiting and reading applications from students in China. And she told me, Eric, we had enough students this year, this is 2 years ago now, we had enough students with perfect SATs, perfect GPAs just from China, that if we wanted, we could have only accepted those students and filled the entire freshman class. But she said it would have been boring. So they turned down students with perfect scores and perfect grades because they were looking for other criteria. And yes, they want some students like that, and some students like this, and some students like something else. They want them all to come together and cross-pollinate and grow from each other through their shared experiences, to share their cultures, to share their ideas, to share their thinking, and all grow from each other. Kind of like if you've seen the movie The Breakfast Club, how they came in as 5 very different people and they left as 5 very different people. That's what colleges want.
Awesome, thank you. And if the student would, if a working professional would like to become a student or learn some courses, means this will still apply, because SAT we can write, but other stuffs we cannot do it, right?
Are you asking me about if you're an adult returning to education?
Yeah.
So the admissions process is different for adults than it is for high school students applying to be freshmen. If you're looking at, maybe you already have a degree and you're looking for a different degree, like a master's degree or a doctorate degree, yes, in many cases there are college application essays for those things, and certain things are similar. But if you already have part of a degree and you're looking to finish a degree, then you're a transfer student, and then the process can be different. We're looking more at grades and scores at that point.
Thank you so much for the clarification.
You're welcome. I see some questions coming in through the chat. Do you want to get to some of those?
Yeah, I'm scrolling through the chat questions now, and we also have tons of questions like in our YouTube. So I'm going to scroll through quickly. Nagarajan, you're in the line, but let me read it out. What's the importance of Psat over SAT in terms of college admission?
Sure. So colleges will never see your PSAT scores. They're just a practice test and a good way for you to understand where you are. The only thing colleges will see about PSATs is they will buy lists of students. So they will buy them in a certain bracket. So let's say, a college looking for students who have 1,400 or higher can buy the contact information of students with 1,400 or higher, and then they will mail you things in the mail. Other colleges might be targeting students from 1,000 to 1,200 or something. I'm making these numbers up as a hypothetical, and then they'll advertise to you, but they don't know exactly your score, and they're not accepting you based on those scores. Now, the importance of the SAT versus the ACT is really in flux right now, in part because of the pandemic, because so many students had a hard time testing last year. But some schools are considering SAT and ACT scores the same as they always have. Some schools have gone what's called test optional. Test optional means you can choose to send scores or choose not to send scores. And if you don't send scores, they tell you that that will not affect your chances of getting in. And generally speaking, I don't believe that. And the reason why is there are two numbers that we can find out to know if that's true. One is what percent of students applying don't send scores if they're test optional. And some colleges will tell you that. Another number is what percent of the students who are accepted did not send their scores. And some colleges will tell you that, but I have not found a college that will tell you both. And we need both to know if it's true. Because if 50% of students applied without scores and 50% of accepted students applied without scores, then we can say, okay, then not sending scores did not hurt a student's chances of application, of admission. But if 50% applied without scores and 70% got in with scores, well, then it's to your advantage to send scores. And we don't know because they won't tell us. And if they won't tell us, I am skeptical. And I feel like, what are they hiding? Why won't they tell us? So my feeling is always it's better to have a good score and not need it than to need a good score and not have it. That said, there's a very small handful of colleges that are what's called test blind. A test blind college will not look at your score. So big news last year was all the public colleges in the state of California went test blind at least for 5 years. After that, they can reevaluate and decide what they want to do. But for those public colleges, they will not look at scores at all. So it will not help you at all. But in general, understand that the best known colleges, the ones that are in the most populated areas, the ones that have big sports programs, the ones that are like the highest academic colleges, they get the most applications. And because they get the most applications, it means they have the least amount of time to look at each one. So they have to go fast. And those colleges tend to put more weight on the SAT or ACT scores. Whereas schools that are lesser known, smaller schools in less populated areas, maybe they have Division II or Division III sports or no sports at all. Those colleges get fewer applications. They have more time to look at each one. So they rely on those scores less.
All right, I'm gonna pick a question like from our YouTube channel, like from Kadir Lakshmanan. Demonstrated interest or work should be unique one, question mark. Some of the activities, a lot of kids to do the same thing. And how do you differentiate and stand out in terms of the?
Excellent question. So that goes back to what we called a hook that makes you different and special. And an essay, a college application essay, is a great way to show your hook, create your hook, to talk about your activity in a way that other students aren't. And we talked about being more well-rounded within your passion. Some students were on the team, but maybe your student was the captain of the team. Maybe your student volunteered to help the younger kids in the recreation league as an assistant coach. Maybe your kid got a job, refereeing the games. And so those are ways that your student can stand out from students who just signed up and went and did a thing versus a student who pursued other opportunities within their passion.
All right, thank you. And we have Nagarajan. Like Nagarajan, it's your turn. You can ask the questions. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. I think my question was almost similar to the earlier question. Out of the 5 requirements, some of the requirements like extracurricular activities, demonstrated interest, they're all like subjective in nature. So how do they compare? Do they give a score to some kind of activities? Like that was my question. It was similar to the earlier question.
That is an excellent question. So I talked about a few different statistics that colleges have. I talked about their retention, which is what percent of freshmen return as sophomores. I talked about their yield, which is what percent of students they accept choose to go there. But there's also an acceptance rate, which is what percent of the students who apply get accepted. So some schools might have an 80 or 90% acceptance rate. And those schools are taking a very quick look and saying, okay, good enough, let's go. Let's go. We need butts in the seat. Let's go. But other more competitive colleges, some of the most competitive colleges do design their own point system where they award more points for these things and less points for those things. Also, many very competitive colleges will have members of the admissions panel vote yes or no on a student. At a college like Harvard, that vote has to be unanimous. Everybody on the panel has to vote yes on the student to get accepted. Whereas other schools, it may just be a majority vote. Also, for every college, there is an admissions officer who is your person, who's assigned to your area, whether it's New Jersey or Central Jersey or Middlesex County, or, you know, however granularly that college has divided up the country or our area. And that person is one of the people who votes on the people from their area. And that's the person who goes to your local college fair and meets students. That's the person who comes to your high school and talks to students on lunch. That's the person who's responsible for answering your questions when you have them, or maybe conducting interviews if that college does it. And so that's a person who can get to know their prospects in an area better. And that person can weigh in more heavily on accept this student instead of that student because I've gotten to know these students. But you're right, it can be subjective. And that's why we want to get as many gold stars as possible and not leave it to just one category. And some colleges care more about demonstrated interest and some less. Some care more about legacy status and some less. Some care more about each of these categories. So the more of the bases you can cover, the better off you'll be.
Okay, another question from Zoom. From which grade kids can start to prep for SAT or ACT?
That is a really great question. So I told you earlier that junior year is testing year. And I told you there are a lot of other things to deal with other than just these tests, like grades and extracurriculars and all the other things. So generally speaking, the earliest I want my students to start preparing for these tests is summer going into junior year. They should take the PSAT in 10th grade, great. They should get those scores in December, great. I don't even open my registration for sophomores until they get their PSAT scores. And then I don't really want them taking class until summer or fall of going into junior year. The only times I'll have a sophomore taking test prep is when they have a real specific reason, like maybe a coach is recruiting them and they need to look at scores on September 1st, which is the first day they're allowed to talk to students. So yeah, maybe a spring test for a 10th grader under those circumstances. I had a student last year, she knew she was going to have to undergo surgery toward this fall. And so she wanted to start sooner because she wasn't sure if she'd be able to physically take these tests this year. So for her, there was a reason. But the reason why I don't want students starting to prep in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade for these tests is two reasons. One, they're either going to do a lot of prep and then they're going to burn out. And they're not going to want to keep doing it. They're going to push back against you no matter how much they love you and how much you care. They're going to say, enough, no more. And then there's a big gap between when they stop and when they take these tests in junior year. Or they will put all of their work into it and so much focus that they won't put their time into all these other things they need to do. And then they come to me when it's time to write college application essays. And I say, great, tell me your stories. And they say, well, I worked on my SAT a lot. I say, okay, but what else did you do? What activities did you do? Well, I worked on my SAT a lot, and they don't have stories to write about and they don't have passion they've explored. So the answer to your question is, I start registration for the summer and fall, December 6th or 7th, whenever PSAT scores come out for my 10th graders, so they can start prep in the summer going into or the fall of junior year. But the best thing 8th, 9th, 10th graders can do during those years to get ready, two things. One, read. Please read a book, read a magazine, read an article, read whatever your student is interested in, but read. Because one of the biggest challenges students have on these tests is they have to read 65 minutes is the first section, and they don't have the attention for it. And they don't understand what they're reading, and they don't know what those words mean. So if your student reads 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, they'll be in a much better place when they start prepping for these tests. And the other thing I encourage younger students to do to get ready for these tests is when they're doing homework for math specifically, very often a teacher will tell them, chapter 5, unit 2, questions 2 through 20, the even questions. And at the end, at the bottom, there are some word problems. And very often I find teachers don't assign those. They just assign the equation, solve, and they never get to the word problems. But on the SAT and on the ACT, most of the math questions are phrased as word problems. So if your student is doing, chapter 5, unit 2 homework, Encourage them to do 1 or 2 more questions at the bottom that maybe wasn't assigned, but is good practice for applying the math they're learning to word problems. So when the test comes, they understand how to turn word problems into the equations that they know how to solve. Those are good things they can be doing younger than 11th grade to get ready.
Oh, thank you, Eric. So another question from Zoom, from Susila. If a student A gets 34 out of 36 and student B gets 30 out of 36 in ACT scores, in that scenario, how the college pick the student? Will college compare because they have some percentile acceptance rate?
That's a really good question. So there's sometimes when the difference is negligible, which means too small to be significant. And there are some times where the difference is significant. So if a college is looking at a student with a 33 versus a 34, it doesn't matter. They both check the box. But if a college is looking at a student with a 30 and a student with a 34, they're really not comparing those students. Because if the college wants students with 34s, they're not going to look at the students with 30s. If a college says from 28 and up, we're happy to accept students. Okay, those students qualify. They're in the nightclub. Now they're looking at all the other criteria. And maybe a student with a 34 might be a better candidate for the honors program, or might have an easier time getting into a more competitive major. But essentially, if a college is willing to look at a student from this number up, they're willing to look at them. And it's not going to come down to this one criteria. If they're eligible, now they're looking at a holistic read of everything about that student. They're in the door, but what's going to get them on the stage? Some nightclubs say 30 is too low. Some say 30 is good enough. 30 and 34, they're all out there. Now, which ones do we pick? So it really depends on the college and depends on the program. And you can find a college's average SAT scores called the interquartile range, which is if there's 4 quarters of scores, the middle 2 quarters, the middle half on most colleges' websites. And if your student is in the range, then they check the box. If they're above the range, they might get scholarships. They might get acceptance into the honors program. If they're below the range, 1 in 4 students at the college are below that range, but they've made up for it on a sliding scale of 1 or more of those other categories. So maybe testing wasn't for them, but they have phenomenal grades, phenomenal extracurricular activities, phenomenal demonstrated interest and a hook that they've developed in their essays. That can make up for a lower score. It's a sliding scale.
Okay, thank you.
Arpaya, can I have a question?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Karik. It's a great, information. A lot of parents join YouTube and as well as Zoom. We had a great experience to learn about, college, things. Most of the parents, thinks about, my daughter or son is going to get, good SAT and also GPA. But the only question is always they have a problem with the essay. Like each and every college, they have a common app. When you go for common app, you have to write an essay. And also each and every college, you have to have 2 or 3 essays. Kids are asking, who is going to read these all essays? For example, when you go for Ivy League or big colleges, hundreds of thousands of application, who is going to read and how they are going to evaluate? What is the big deal of this? It's like, every parents have faced this kind of experience when they go to the college. Can you please share to the parents, and the kids, this is, what's your experience and, the colleges looks after this?
Sure. So first of all, let me tell you, more than one person is going to look at each applicant because they don't want one person to be the only one deciding, because as somebody said earlier, it is a little subjective. That said, many times they'll have people in the admissions office who work for the college reading it. They'll have your specific person who's assigned to your area reading it more carefully. They might have some students or graduate students doing some of the reading. They might have some alumni, students who graduated and are now out in the field reading these things. I got an email a little while ago from Northeastern University asking me, would you like to read essays? We're paying $16.50 an hour. Please read these essays. So there are a lot of people who can read them. Stanford very famously spends only 2 minutes per applicant, which includes all the essays. They go so fast. And it's true that these readers have to read, in some cases, dozens, if not hundreds of essays in a day. And so the biggest challenge with college application essays is to stand out, to be memorable, to have whoever has to read your essay go home at the end of a long day and say to their husband, their wife, their boyfriend, their girlfriend, their cat, you know, Mr. Whiskers, I read a really interesting essay today about your essay. And so that is, you know, one of the challenging things, because as I often say, and I alluded to earlier, tests and scores, test scores and grades qualify a student, but the essays are what make them pick you over somebody else, developing all those other pieces. So who reads them? A little bit of everyone. A couple of years ago, it was December, and I was on break because I take a break in December. And I wanted to go on my break. I wanted to go visit some colleges. That's what I do every year in December and June. I take a break, I visit colleges. And so I was in Philadelphia and I went to Temple University. And I also stopped by at Villanova, and both of them said the same thing to me. Nobody can talk to you. We are all too busy reading applications. Everybody who works here, we are reading applications. Come back some other time. We're focused on this right now. So yeah, it's that team as well. It's a little bit of everybody, but generally speaking, you can count on it being mostly people who work in the admissions office, who are professionals at this, who know what they're looking for, and especially the person for your area.
All right.
Yeah, it's a great, yeah, that's one of the, great questions. Another question I want to ask you about, most of them here, in this Zoom or, YouTube, most of them are Indians. So my question is, see, most of the parents, they believe that, my daughter and son is going to get a very good SAT, and also they get, GPA. Their main question is like, what is the possibility of, when you go for Ivy League? You said previously that there is no race or something, but, when you look at the data, most of the undergraduate or, when you postgraduate with a specialty, only, the Asians get only 25 to 30%. That's what in the statistics when you Google it. So how do you address this, for the parents, those who are here? We are not competing with the 100%. We are competing with only the Asians with 30%. So how competitive we are, and, how this will be addressed? Another question with this is, most of the Indians, those believe that my daughter or son is like 90%, they're good in SAT and GPA more than 4 or something. So they want to be like 10% or 10 percentile this margin. Do we have to go for, like a prep or like your institution? What is your, recommendation for them?
I'm not sure I understand what the last question is asking. Let me get to the first question first, and then if I don't answer it, ask me the last question again, because I'm not 100%. So first of all, I understand, obviously, I'm talking to a large group of Indian families, and a bit about my background. I'm Jewish. And an interesting historical footnote about the college admissions system, the admissions process, is that originally the college admissions process was created to get rid of Jews. This is true. Originally, they were just accepting whoever wanted to go there and whoever's dad went there. And then they realized, gee, we got a lot of lunkheads here. We should probably have some standards. So they instituted the SAT, and colleges started requiring that. And what they found was the children of immigrants who were very academically focused, which at that point, the big wave of immigrants were Jews, were doing very well on these tests and were getting into these top choice colleges. And what was happening is all these, old money legacy families said, oh, I'm not paying all this money for my son, my daughter, to go to college with a bunch of Jews. No, thank you. So they invented the college admissions process to try to figure out who are the Jews. And they had things like essays and interviews and tours. And they developed a code, J1, definite Jew, J2, likely Jew, J3, unsure. And so the irony is that what was created as a tool to weed out diversity and create hegemony is now used for the exact opposite. Today's colleges want the entire opposite of what they wanted 100 years ago. What they want is a diverse student body. They want a mix of students from all walks of life, from all countries, from all states, from all ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds, all schools of thought to come together and to cross-pollinate and to mix and to grow from each other. So the fact is, colleges want Asian students, but no college wants all one kind of students. So anytime somebody says to me, gee, I feel like all the spots are going to students not like mine. Let me tell you, I've heard Asian parents say, I hear Asian families have a harder time getting in. Then I have white families say, gee, I hear only the Asian kids get in. White kids can't get into college anymore. And everybody thinks that somehow they're the ones being left out. And the fact is that they want a mix of everyone. They don't want the entire graduating class of one high school. They don't want the entire population of one village. They don't want everyone to have the same background and the same story, but they do want enough students to come together to feel like they are at home. So that's why you can go to any college across America and find a kosher meal, to find a halal meal, to find vegetarian meals, to find things that work for a little bit of everything. So I wouldn't worry too much about what if my student can't get in because they're Asian, because the fact is colleges are specifically making more room at the table for more voices every day on purpose. If anything, have your students celebrate what makes them unique and special and different in their essays and applications. Have them address those things head on and say, this is an important part of who I am. And a college is more likely to say, oh, great, someone who's going to bring that cultural perspective to our college, rather than a student who, gee, the name says Nikhil Gupta, but it reads like Brad Smith. That's the same kid. Give me somebody who's going to bring me a different perspective.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead, KG.
Okay, Kabul. Thanks, Kabul. So I'm going to go into YouTube and then what is the best way to understand or learn about the colleges in terms of what they offer that align with my child's interest?
Gosh, websites are the best place. The internet is your friend. So I would say probably start with a good website is bigfuture.org. Bigfuture.org is the College Board's college website. They're the company that makes the SAT and the APs and the GRE and a lot of other products. And Big Future is a good place to sort by colleges based on size and geographic location and major. And then from there, go over to those colleges' websites and dig into your program on their website and find out more about it. Now, that said, and I know that I'm really going over my time at this point because I'm giving you long answers, and the goal was 45 minutes of talking, 15 minutes of Q&A, and you guys have other things to get to, so I'm not going to take up all the time. But one thing I'll tell you is I do a very little watched YouTube series. Every week I put out a 1-minute video where I swear I do it in 1 minute. So if you guys find Solution Prep on YouTube, you can subscribe to us there. And every week I put out a little 1 minute about a different topic. And they come out every week. So that's a good explanation about things. But, I'm thinking of it right now because the last one that I recorded that'll come out in a few weeks is what if I don't know what I want to major in, which kind of goes hand in hand with how do I learn more about my major? Because some students know what they want to do with the rest of their lives, and some students don't. And some students who think they do are wrong. And so the most important thing is to consider, what are you interested in learning about? What are you interested in maybe working in? And then pursuing those things and digging into those things, but having the flexibility to change once you get there, because over a third of students change their major at some point in college. That number goes up to over 50% in the STEM fields. Students change their major all the time. So it's okay to read up on it, know what you want, find the right college for you, but then be willing to learn about other things and say, well, maybe I'm more interested in this down the line.
Right, thanks, Eric. We do have like more time, so it's okay if you want to like explain this answer.
I'll stay.
Okay,
I have my next appointment's at 9:30. I've got a half-hour phone call with somebody. So
okay. Yeah, we have like overwhelming response, like both in YouTube and in Zoom. So if you can stick, that would be great.
Sure. And I will reiterate that if you guys have questions we don't get to tonight, you can email me questions@solutionprep.com. And tonight is being recorded. Will this be available later or no?
It is being recorded and it will be available later, and we will send the link for the recording like in our thank you email. So if you haven't subscribed like to our email and newsletter, this is the time. And while I'm reading out, Eric, if you want to type in like your YouTube channel in the chat window, that's good, and then we can also include that in our email as well.
Sure. It's not a pretty URL. I need 100 subscribers to get a pretty URL, and like I said, it's not a very widely watched YouTube, but it's good. It's real hard to do a good job. Just search Solution Prep, you'll find me. Okay. But you can certainly find us at solutionprep.com, or you can find links to all of our things right there. And I try to post a weekly video on that page as well. And you can find more information about all the things that I do, like SAT and ACT prep and college admissions. Of course, I'm an expert at this because I do it every day, all day. This is my 24th school year doing this. And I really enjoy what I do because I get to make a meaningful difference, helping high school students reach their goals and helping parents keep their sanity through the whole thing.
Yeah. Hey, in case if I'm not reading your question, it might be because like it's either answered or it's like very close to another previously answered question, like in terms of like time. So now I see another question, which is, should the extracurricular activities should have certification?
Not necessary. I mean, any certification is a little gold star, but it's one of the smaller gold stars. You shouldn't only pursue things that will certify you, but having certifications is nice. Can't hurt, can only help, isn't the end of the world if you don't have it.
Okay.
Short answer.
Another question is, how students in the middle school gets into the boarded school, like, or will there be any difference in college admissions for the students from the boarded school than the regular high school thing?
That's an excellent question. So there are vocational schools or magnet schools that specialize in things like technology. I know I do a lot of work with Communications High School in Monmouth County, the Marine Academy of Science and Technology I do a lot of work with in Monmouth County. And there are many schools like this in Middlesex and Ocean and Mercer as well that I'm familiar with. And certainly one thing colleges care about, I said grades, but I also, when I talked about grades, I talked about academic rigor. I talked about this level class and this level class and this level class. And at those vocational, magnet schools, students are taking a much more academically rigorous course load. And yes, that is looked on kindly by colleges. And yes, a greater number of those students do have opportunities to go on to top level colleges. Absolutely. That said, going back to what I said a couple minutes earlier, no college wants the entire graduating class of one school. So I'll pick on MAST, the Marine Academy of Science and Technology, which is on Sandy Hook, where I teach classes there. I have a new class starting next week, but an enormous percent of those students want to go to West Point, which is the United States Military Academy, want to go to Annapolis, the United States Naval Academy, and maybe the United States Air Force Academy. And so a lot more of those students will apply than at, let's say, East Brunswick High School. I'm in East Brunswick right now. And a lot more of those students will be accepted, but they are competing against each other. So a student at that school may have better grades, better scores, better extracurricular activities than a student at, let's say, East Brunswick High School. but the East Brunswick High School might get in because let's say 20 students from Mast apply to West Point. They might take 10 higher than at any other school, but then they turn down 10 other students who might not be who might be more qualified than a student from East Brunswick where maybe only one student applies, but because they want to have a mix of students. And so, you know, specifically America's military academy, just to pick on schools, they want a representation of the nation. So they want to accept students in equal proportion to how we are represented in Congress. So they have members of Congress write letters of recommendation, write nominations for those students, so they can accept students from Iowa and students from Idaho and students from Indiana, and not just students from New Jersey and New York and Pennsylvania. And so qualified students here might not get in. Qualified students from magnet schools might not get in because they're spreading those opportunities around to other states or to other schools, etc. So yes, a better chance of getting in. Yes, a greater number of those students getting in, but never a guarantee. And that's why you don't apply to one college. You apply to 5 to 10, maybe 15 at the absolute max if some of your schools are much more competitive colleges.
Okay, so another question regarding ACT and SAT. Does the student needs to take SAT and ACT or both?
So that goes back to what I said way in the beginning. Maybe you joined us later, which is I always encourage students to take both because about half of my students see their best score on the SAT and about half of my students see their best scores on the ACT. And we don't know which one your student's going to be until they prepare for these tests, practice for these tests, take these tests and get their scores. Now, right now, this week is, last Monday is when ACT scores came out. And I told you I start working with students summer going into junior year. And so that was for my summer students, their first ACT scores came in September. And I'm getting to have conversations with parents all this past week following up. Okay, let's look at the scores. Is your student better at this? Just focus on this. Is your student better at that? Just focus on that. Because at the end of the day, you only have to send one to the colleges. So colleges only require one. But I encourage students to take both so that they can find out which one is better for them. And then that's the one they pursue. That's the one they take more. And sometimes some of these phone calls, I'm saying, gee, the scores are really close. Take them both again. Sorry. And students don't like that answer, but that's where we are sometimes. That's part of the process.
Okay. Another question from Kevin, if someone has already have a OK score in SAT, 1500 or ACT, 30, do you recommend still to apply to a top tier college?
Yeah. So first of all, can you give me the first part? If they don't have, or if they do have that score?
If they do have an OK score, 1500, yeah.
Okay. So first of all, 1500 is like a 34 on the ACT, not like a 30. 30 will get you into the honors program at Rutgers, but Princeton won't look at you. Should they apply to top schools? The point is not to find the best school in the country according to some list that will take your child. The point is to find the right college for your son or your daughter, to find the one where they're going to get what they're looking for academically, socially, culturally, with the support they need to reach their goals. And there are certainly Ivy level colleges, not just the colleges in the athletic conference called the Ivy League, but colleges who are looking for that level of score. There are many schools where your student will get a better education, will get better professors, will get better internship opportunities, an easier chance at getting a job interview, a great alumni network where they're meeting leaders in their future field. And yes, those things are great, but applying to those schools, everybody applying to those schools has great grades and great scores. There's nobody who's like the bottom half of their class with just so-so scores applying to Harvard saying, maybe I'll get in. They're all at that level, and these schools still only accept fewer than 10%. So it can be kind of like buying a lottery ticket for some of these, even for qualified students. So if there are schools that they're excited about that are at those levels, yes, they should apply for them. But understand, they're always going to be reach schools. Every student should apply to a combination of reach schools, fit schools, and safety schools. If you only apply to the top schools, then you might get a bunch of no's, not because you're not qualified, but because there's not enough students and you're competing against too many students like you. So yes, put some of those schools on your list if you're at that level, but don't put all of your eggs in one basket, and be open to some other schools too, because I've had parents who have had their sons and daughters take my class where they are very wealthy parents who went to just okay colleges, but they made a lot out of their education. So understand that most colleges, you can get a great education, but it's what you make out of it. And at top colleges, there are more resources, so it's easier to make something out of it. That's what we're talking about here.
Okay, another question regarding early decision. Is early decision or restrictive early action worth it?
Excellent question. So worth it is a really big question. First, let me explain for parents who don't understand what these terms mean. Many colleges have early action or early decision deadlines, which are oftentimes November 1st or 15th, occasionally earlier or later, where if you apply earlier, you get looked at among a smaller applicant pool because fewer students have applied earlier, so they get to spend more time looking at you, which is good for you. They spend more time reading your essay, more time considering you. They get to see that you're a hard worker. You're the kind of student who doesn't put things off till the last minute. You get your things done early, and that's the kind of student who will succeed at their college. You show them how interested you are in their college because you took that opportunity. So yes, it can increase your chances of getting in. And at some colleges, they will tell you point blank, we accept this percent from the regular pool, but that percent from the earlier pool, and that is higher than this. So yes, it can increase your chances, never a guarantee. But with early decision, that is binding. And what that means is if you apply early decision, you are committing to that college. And your application is, will you please accept my commitment? Because if they say, yes, we accept, you are going there. So you can only apply to one college early decision. And if they accept you, that's where you're going to go. So some people say, well, I want to choose which school will be my ED, my early decision, based on where I think I have the best chance. No, you only want to pick early decision if that is your number one top choice college. That if every college on your list accepted you, you would pick that one. Then you should apply early decision to that school. But if you say, well, I've got a top 2, a top 3, a top 5, I want to go on an extra visit, we'll see how the scholarships turn out. Early decision is not for you. Now, early action, you can apply to more schools early action, and it's non-binding. But one question, one thing you said was restrictive early action. A small number of colleges have restrictive early action, where if you apply early action to them, you may not apply early decision anywhere else. Or you may not apply early action to other Ivy League schools or whatever nonsense they're making up for whatever their rules are. And is it worth it? Well, is it worth it to you? Because if it's your top choice college and you are willing to forsake opportunities at other schools, then maybe it's worth it for you. And that's a decision that you can make as a family. But understand that with early decision, you are committing.
Okay, we're going to have our Q&A session till 9, which means we have 5 minutes left. I'm going to read out as many questions as we can.
Lightning round. Lightning round. Let's go.
And the rest will be answered via email. So we can take SAT or ACT is 3 times recommended, or if we take beyond that, will it impact my admission?
Good question. It used to be a long time ago that if you took 4 or more, they averaged them and they would not super score, but that is over. It does not matter how many times you test, they will super score if they super score, which most schools do, but not every school. But at a certain point, you're torturing your child. So my suggestion is take the PSAT, get practice, take the real test 2, maybe 3 times and be done. The only students I encourage to test 4 or more times are the students who call me after they've already taken 2 or more tests. And then I say, okay, well, I want you taking at least 2 after this course because I want you to super score once you know what you're doing. So that's the answer. Next.
Okay, if you go to a low college, will it affect what job you get?
Low college. Well, let's understand, a college is what you make of it. So we're not going to call any college a low college, just like we're not going to call any of your children low sons and daughters. They all have potential and they can get great educations at a lot of colleges. Can it impact your job opportunities? Certainly. top businesses do recruit more at top colleges, and they do offer internships at top colleges, and internships can lead to job opportunities. And so top colleges can give your child more career opportunities. But that said, we had a question earlier, what if my student created a business? Well, then they can make their own opportunities. They can network if they want to. They can, meet the right people, find the right industry. There are people who never went to college who have great career opportunities in their field. So, there are just more opportunities, easier opportunities at top colleges, but not no opportunities everywhere else.
Okay, Eric, what are the scholarship criteria or requirements?
All right, so that is a huge question. The short answer is let's think about colleges in two categories. There are scholarships from the college, where they're basing their scholarships on your grades and your scores and the strength of your application, like your extracurricular activities and your essays. And then there are scholarships you may have to proactively apply for at the college through their website, where you might have to write an essay or, some other application. So that's one kind of scholarship. Another kind of scholarship is a third-party scholarship. Your student and the college are in a two-party relationship. Anybody else is a third party. So parents, check with human resources when you go to work and find out, do you offer scholarships for the kids of employees? Because they might. Check with their clubs, check with their high school, check with their sports league or their team, because there may be scholarships for all of those different things. And some scholarships are big money and they're more competitive. Some scholarships are small money and people say, well, it's so small, who cares? Why bother? Then you have a better chance of getting those, and they can add up. And then some scholarships are for what I call stuff, which is stuff like a laptop or auto insurance or a cell phone bill that you might have to pay for during college. You can get a scholarship to help pay for, and that can save you some money. So look everywhere. Look at 3 websites. One, I mentioned already, bigfuture.org has a good scholarship page. One is CapX, CAPPEX, CapX, 2 P's. Another is Unigo, UNIGO. That there are many scholarship websites out there. Those are the 3 I like. I find they're the best organized and the easiest to find the third-party scholarships I'm looking for.
KG, I have a question. Can I go?
Yeah, sure, Kapil.
Yeah, Kapilan. Hi, Eric. It's a very good question. Like most of the parents, they have a concern about financial aid. So to my knowledge, there is 2 options. One is merit-based, the other one is need-based. The rest of all the fellowship is like foundations. Each college, they have a different foundations. They provide all this. So can you share with the parents what is merit-based and what is the need-based? I think that's what most of the parents want to know.
That is a huge question. And I think that to better answer that question, what I'm going to do is when we're off the call, I'm going to send out a list of the different financial aid nights that I'm doing for high schools, because I'm doing over the next 5 weeks, I'll be doing full, robust like this, but just focused on merit-based, need-based, financial aid, scholarships, all that stuff, and the forms to fill them out. I'll be doing them for East Brunswick, North Brunswick, Princeton, Red Bank Regional, Mast, Wall, Toms Rivers, North, South, East, Neptune. I got so many colleges, so many high schools. I will send you the list, and there will be a link for each one, and you can choose what day you want to join us on Zoom and get financial aid night then, so I can answer that question at much greater length than I can afford right now. But I'll certainly open that up to you guys as well.
Yeah, it's a great. Maybe like a KG, we can have another session also for financial aid. This also.
If I have time.
Yeah,
link to the dozen that I'm already doing.
Yeah, I know. It's because most of the parents they have another concerns about the financial aid.
I'll bet.
Definitely we'll have another session to discuss about all this.
That's why I'm doing this a dozen times for a dozen high schools in the next month.
Yeah.
And welcome to come to that.
Okay,
I'm
great.
happy to see you on Zoom then.
Yeah, great. Thank you, KG. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Kabilan. So right on time here. So thanks, Eric. This is very, very informative. And I see a lot of thank you notes in our chat session, both in Zoom and as well as in YouTube.
Thank you. And if I could just squeeze in like a 30-second commercial and then I'll get out of your hair. One more time for those of you joining us. My name is Eric Ginsberg. I am a master tutor at Solution Prep, where we do things like SAT and ACT prep and college admissions counseling. Basically nuts to bolts, we get high school students into college. So if you do need help with that stuff, please reach out to us. We are at solutionprep.com. I'll put it in the chat for those of us on Zoom, and for those of you on YouTube and Facebook, of course, you can just look up solutionprep.com. If you have more questions beyond tonight, I don't mind taking questions by email. We work with students. We have centers in East Brunswick, in Wall, in Little Silver, and I'm looking at opening another one, but I'm not going to talk about it till I have a lease signed somewhere else, as well as plenty of students online from all across the country. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate your time and for inviting me. And hopefully I can help you guys out with this stuff. Goodbye.
All right. Thanks, Eric. New Jersey Tamil Peravai has hosted many informative sessions throughout the year. So Peravai stand out like to these type of informative sessions. This is possible mainly because of our annual members and sponsors. We want all of your support, and if you can join us as a member or continue as a member for the coming years, that will be very, very supportive for us. Please join us as our membership program is going to open very soon. Peravai, like I said, has done a lot of great sessions in form of our Knowledge Forum series. We covered many areas, including Tamil literature, which are more than 3,000 years old, like to the current affairs, like tax filing, investments, and college education. We always choose a topic which connects and useful for all of us. The one common thing which connects us every time when we meet, and it's also like core part in our art, is our kids and their education. When it comes to kids and education, it's kind of like takes a key priority for us. And we want to talk about this and then find some good subject matter experts to bring them in and get their views and help our community out. So when I reached Eric, who has like almost around like 24 years of experience in this field, he was kindly accepted that and joined us in this session. Thanks again, Eric. Like to me, like in an educational triangle, the key players are students and educators. And of course, it's not complete without the family engagement. So when I talk about parents here, so we're going to invite a few parents who are just drop their kids like in the college and ready to share their experience with us today. We have Meena and Shakti, like who's going to join us now and then share their experience. I'm welcoming Meena and Shakti.
Hello, Vanakkam. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shakti, and she's my wife, Meena.
Hello. Vanakkam.
Yeah, so we just wanted to give some idea and what we went through, and so we were just following some steps. My older one got into college last year, and we were following, as Eric mentioned. There are some things that we followed, and then we applied, and finally got into records.
Yeah, so we are like first generation parents living in this country, and I believe like most of the viewers are also fall into that category. So it is kind of overwhelming for us first to understand the process. The college admission process is completely new for us. From the background we are from the school system, the college admission process is entirely different. And so we being our son being the first oldest one, so we had to kind of study and dig around, gather information, to understand what's the college process about. Of course, we had to decide on the major. It was not an easy task because the son kept swinging from one major to another. So finally, we kind of chose one or two majors. And then according to that, we had to, as Eric suggested, right, we went through a couple of websites to understand the rating for those colleges for the major that we were looking for. You have to note that the colleges could be really good with a very good name, but it might not be necessarily be good in the major that you're looking for, right? The ranking for that might be slightly at a very higher level. So you'll have to look for the ranking of the college based on the major that you're interested in. So based on that, we were able to narrow down a couple of colleges, and we planned for college visits. That was really helpful for us because it gave us an idea about the college system here. When you go for college visits, they explain their the college programs and the courses and the majors that they offer. They take you around the campus. You get to see their dorms, even to meet with a couple of faculties, and they explain about their tuition structure and the scholarship program available. You'll be able to gather a lot of information. You'll be able to question them and understand their process. It gives you a better idea about the college process there. So, and apart from that, also in the school, you should watch out for college visits, especially for the colleges that you're interested in. If they are coming in for a college visit, you should talk to your school council and register for that particular college visit, so that the kids would be able to meet with the admission officer who would be in charge of selecting the students from the list of application they receive for that district. So the students will get an opportunity to talk to that admission counselor in person, and also to meet them in person. That could add some value to it. And then, of course, apart from this, we basically created a spreadsheet with the list of colleges that we had narrowed down, and gathered more information for each of these colleges, what is the cutoff for those SAT scores and the ACT scores and the GPA. And by the time when we gathered this information, we had an idea of where our son was, which cutoff marks he would fall into. So we were able to, there and there, we were able to decide some colleges which would fit into our category, some which might not fit into our category. And of course, we added more information, in a spreadsheet for each college. We collected information on these cutoff marks, and where it's a private or a public college, colleges, because the tuition fee is entirely dependent on this and the scholarship they offer, and what kind of dorm facilities they offer, and even some information on type of application for each college, because as Eric mentioned, different colleges could follow different application process. Some follow common application or my coalition, or they might have their own application process. Like Rutgers has their own application process. They don't follow any of this common application or my coalition process. So this kind of information we gathered, and the next so we kind of narrowed down the list of colleges finally that we were interested in, and then we went in for the application of the process.
Yeah, actually we mainly chose niche.com. That's where we found all the colleges. We compared with all the acceptance rating and the SAT score and all the information. That was giving a lot, so we narrowed down, and then we applied about 10 colleges. And so as Mina said, we used a common app. So most of the universities, they will accept the application through that website, and some of them are through My Coalition, and the particular colleges, they will be accepting through their own system. So we applied through all those websites. And then, we've actually followed some options, as Eric mentioned, we had early decisions, early action, and regular decision. So we applied early decision, but that's when, we found that my son was in having some dream school, reach school, and then we applied. And there are some advantages, disadvantages also. So Eric mentioned already. And for early action also, but we don't have any bind with the accepting the application. So we applied through early actions too. And there are some dates that you have to watch for the deadlines, and what the decision will be sent. All those information you have to watch through the website. And regular decision, of course, you don't need to have any hassle, that you can wait until the application deadline, and then you can apply maybe around January, February, and then the decision will be coming maybe April or March, April. So depends on the universities. So we followed these simple steps, and then we got my son. He got into the college. So hopefully, good luck for your children for application process, and thank you for giving opportunity.
Nandri, vanakkam.
Nandri, vanakkam.
Thanks, Meena and Shakti. Now I welcome Chinnasamy, like to share his experience as a parent, like on the college admission process. You might be on mute, Chin. Chin, are you on mute?
Voice is not audible.
We couldn't hear you.
I think you have to allow audio from
Still
the
you are
side.
in mute. Your voice is not hearing. Can you check your?
You can also join through mobile, like directly.
Still you are in mute. Can you?
KG is asking you to unmute his mobile.
Oh, no. Okay, got it.
No, still he's in mute. KG.
Yeah, he has to unmute, like from his side.
Since I sent you a picture, just follow that in browser.
Hold on. Can you try now to unmute, Chins, on your phone?
No, still not audible.
Maybe can I go until he's
Yes, sure, Kabilin.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a great opportunity, like NJ Tab, to share with most of the parents. They have a lot of questions, or concerns. What is going on with the kids' college education, admission, and other things. One is main is what is the best score for SAT or ACT, and also what is the financial aid, and also what is the opportunity for Asian kids when competed with other groups. So these three things is very important. As I am also facing the same questions last year. So my twin daughters, they went to the college. So most of them, those who are hearing this, is the same. Last year we had, all that, last 2 years, couple of years, we had a pandemic. Due to that, there are so many issues, where SAT postponed so many times, and, college, schools are closed. So now back to normal, and now you are going to the track. So three questions you have, I saw, the chat and also YouTube. What is the financial aid, and what is the best score we can able to get into the good college, and what is the opportunity for this. So nobody knows exactly how each and every college has go through all this process. That is the truth. And also we have to make sure that you have to choose what is your best option for your kids' interest. That's the most important thing. What is your his major, what he's interested in. The second one is, where do you want the location, whether you want to be in a Northeast or you want to go for any other places. You're ready to send your kids. The third one is many parents ask big, Ivy League, colleges or, low colleges, so these are all things, it's not, no one can address. It's everything is based on what you want, how your kids is. So definitely there is if you send your kids to big college like Ivy League, definitely there is an advantage. But that doesn't mean that if you go for, you send to some other colleges, your kids cannot get job or not. That's not also true. For given an example is, we are all comes from India. How can we go all success and get job into all big companies? So everything is, at the end of the day, is how you are performing and what is your ability to do these things. So don't worry about all these things. Focus on your kids, how they are able to do things, what is their SAT scores or ACT scores, what's their GPA. And when you go for, Navians, each and every schools, they have an account, Navians, for both kids and also parents have the account. You go and check where your kids are stand for that. And also each school, each college, they will show you that, each is college where the schools stands for also. So that's all gives you more, informations. The other thing is like a financial aid. As I asked Eric also, there are only two ways. One is merit-based, the other one is need-based. The merit-based is most of the Ivy League and big colleges, most of the colleges based on your merit. Oh, this student is very good and his GPA is good and the SAT is good, and we wanted to hold the student so that they will give you merit-based scholarship. The other one is need-based. The need-based is only like if you cannot afford the college. For example, if you are applying for the Ivy League, usually the Ivy League is like a 70 or 90, or 100K, whatever. If you are not able to afford that college, but still, if your kids, get a good GPA and ACT or SAT, if the institute, the Ivy League or big institution, they think that you are a potential candidate, then they will offer you a better, like a scholarship. Okay, I will give you 50K out of 90 or 100K. So that is a need, merit based. The need based is like, if you are poor and you cannot afford, still the Ivy League ready to offer you with affordability. How do they know whether you are poor or rich? That's what is the key. So whenever, when you are in a high school, your kids are something, you will know that the FAFSA, that is one of them. So you have to apply for that, and that you will provide all your informations with the Social Security and your assets and everything. The federal government will let you know that what is your limit for affordability. Based on that, the institution will decide. So this is the main criteria for, like things. So I don't want to more details about this. So if you have any questions, any related things, you can call us, the NJ tab will ready to, help you and share with our experience. A lot of parents here, last year, many students, parents, they send their kids to medical school, engineering and other things. So we are ready to share with this. Hopefully, Channasamy is ready to share his also experience.
Yes, thanks, Kabalan. So if most of us know Kabalan here, like he's a professor from Ruggers. And I think like Chinnasamy is ready. We're going to try like a different approach now. Chinnasamy, whenever you're ready.
எல்லாருக்கும் வணக்கம். நான் பேசுறது கேக்குதுங்களா? கேக்குதுங்களா நான் பேசுறது?
கேக்குதுங்க. நீங்க ஸ்டார்ட்.
சரிங்க. So I want to go through my experience. It's really challenging. It's really what we can do our upward college. So it's a huge difference when you apply and colleges here when you compare early stage. But college schools has really a lot of guidance. Basically, each and every step the details of what information to get prepared for your college. So the one of the tools I use for them agents giving more colleges for sales for their whatever the GPS. So it's easy to understand and then you can see what colleges you're interested in and apply whether you're going to get it or not based on your description.
Chinnasamy, like, can you keep your phone very close, like we couldn't hear properly?
Okay. Is it better?
No, maybe you should use the phone a little closer. Yeah.
Your voice is not audible.
So we're still running some technical problem. So if you have any questions, like I'll ask Meena, Shakti, and Kabilan to answer it, like while we fix our phone issue here.
Still not audible.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, how you want to increase your GPA based on the criteria. So there are a lot of things. There are advanced AP courses you can take based on your kids' interest. So each year you can go at least 3 or 4 APs that will boost up your GPA credit. It's basically the GPA point. It depends on the individual students, but what we went through our son. So we have applied most of the AP programs, which will boost our GPAs overall. So there are the things you want to really get to know. So basically, like the GPA, weighted GPA versus non-weighted GPA. So if you have the AP courses, if you take AP courses that get additional extra point, which we didn't know in advance, but once we go through this process, then we understand there is a difference. If you take regular courses versus AP and AP courses, even you go and get the lower score, but the weighted GPA, you boost to the entire GPA and higher level. So you can score 4 out of 4 or 4.3 out of 4 or 5 point. It depends on the which is courses you're taking. And then that will boost overall GPA at the end. The benefit of the GPA boost, basically you get some tuition fees in the college when you go apply the same. Not every college are accepting the AP courses, but some of them really taking the course on the basic level. You get the credit for those colleges. And then you can save your tuition fees based on the credits. Either you can take 2 or 3 courses off, or maybe you can get a semester fee off. It's really helpful if you understand the whole process, but we didn't know in advance. If you went through the cycle and then understand what are the things you can improve on your process. And then the other thing also, so like if you're applying medical program or anything, so there are colleges, they take the courses, the AP courses, but you can substitute the AP credits to change the different classes. Say, for example, you take the biology as an AP, and then if you want to switch that credit to something else, you can take the world language, then take that one, and then you still can study in the biology if you're going to medical program. It depends. It's just giving you one example how you can improve the process. And then the other thing, in overall, so you get the credits back on the college, and then you get to know in advance then what are the things you mean, like they develop the skills in the early stage. But this is, it all depends on the individual students. It may work well. Some colleges doesn't accept the AP credits anymore. So if you applying those colleges, it's completely waste. It depends on what you are trying to achieve and get into the college. So this is one of the item we went through here. It's really helpful for us. I just want to share my thought. And then also one other thing we didn't know in advance. So we are attending few colleges seminar. If you're really in the medical program or anything, basically it doesn't need to be in the biology group anymore. So we thought like we have to study in biology courses in order to get in the medical program. But you can take economics, finance, marketing, anything like that. Then all you need, you have to take a minimum course requirements in order to get into the program. That is, you can change in your own path. Some colleges offers like your own career path. Like rather than taking the default courses, you can choose your own path and then makes a final degree complete. So this is all like not available in much areas, but here you can do much different ways, I mean, based on the individual skills. But that's basically I want to share. But thank you very much for listening to this.
Thank you, James. This is very informative. And sorry everyone, for a short technical problem. We do see a lot of questions here in our chat. We will try to answer as much as possible. So there's a lot of suggestion for our next session too. So a question for a parent, or maybe to other people in this forum. Does getting a seal of biliteracy for Tamil language helps in college admission? Kabilan or Sasi, do you want to answer, or is it? Okay, but we will soon get to that, and then answer your question. And then I see your answer in our chat, any dual language helps, here. This comes to the very end of our session today, and thank you everyone for this wonderful session. So as a parent of kids going to high school, I learned a lot, and I also see a lot of takeaways from this session. So this session was in English because we have a lot of viewers who are not a native Tamil speaker or wanted this to be in English, so they can get benefit out of it. So that's why we made this as like a fully English program. But again, like I mentioned before, this kind of program is possible only because of our annual members and sponsors. Like we want all of your support and join us as a member and continue as a member for the coming years as well. Soon, watch out for an email from us, like around like the membership. பேரவை பொழுதுபோக்கு நிகழ்ச்சிகளை மட்டுமன்றி பல அறிவுசார் நிகழ்ச்சிகளை தொடர்ந்து நடத்தி வருகிறது. இதற்கு பெருதுணையாக இருப்பது நீங்கள் அனைவரும் மட்டுமே. ஆண்டு உறுப்பினர்களாகவும் ஆண்டு விளம்பரதாரர்களாகவும் இருக்கும் அனைவருக்கும் எங்கள் நன்றிகள். நீங்கள் தொடர்ந்து எங்களுடன் உறுப்பினராக இருந்து தாழ்மையுடன் கேட்டுக்கொள்கிறேன். பேரவையோடு இணைந்து இருங்கள், தொடர்ந்து பயணிப்போம். இதோ நன்றி உரையாற்ற பேரவையின் துணை செயலாளர் செந்தில் வாசன் அவர்களை அழைக்கிறேன். Word of thanks by Sendil Vasan, our Joint Secretary of New Jersey Tamil பேரவை.
அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். இன்றைய இணைய வழி அறிவரங்கத்தில் பங்கு கொண்ட அனைவருக்கும் என் முதற்கு நன்றிகள். மிக குறுகிய காலத்தில் சிறப்பான இந்த அறிவரங்கத்தை ஏற்பாடு செய்த நியூ ஜெர்சி தமிழ் பேரவையின் துணைத் தலைவர் திரு கருப்பையா கணேசன், வரவேற்புரை வழங்கிய திருமதி கலா நரேஷ் மற்றும் இந்நிகழ்ச்சியின் பின்னணியில் பல்வேறு பணிகளை சிறப்பாக செய்த பேரவையின் செயற்குழு மற்றும் பொதுக்குழு உறுப்பினர்களுக்கு நன்றிகள். எங்களுக்கு வழிகாட்டியாக நியூ ஜெர்சி தமிழ் பேரவையின் நிறுவனர்கள் மற்றும் இயக்குநர்கள் திரு கபிலன் வெள்ளையா, திரு சசிகுமார் ரங்கநாதன், இவ்வாண்டின் தலைவர் திருமதி சாந்தி தங்கராசு அவர்களுக்கும் நன்றிகள் பல. சொல்யூஷன் பிரப் நிறுவனத்தின் முதன்மை பயிற்றுவிப்பாளர் திரு எரிக் கின்ஸ்பர்க் அவர்களுக்கு நியூ ஜெர்சி தமிழ் பேரவையின் சார்பாகவும் பார்வையாளர்கள் உங்கள் அனைவரின் சார்பாகவும் மனமார்ந்த நன்றிகள். A special thanks to Master Tutor of Solution Prep, Mr. Eric Ginsberg, for his wonderful speech. Eric has been teaching the Psat, ACT, and providing college counseling for more than 2 decades. Thanks a lot again, Eric, for this wonderful session. நியூ ஜெர்சி தமிழ் பேரவைக்கு பொருள் ஆதரவு தரும் அனைத்து நிறுவனத்தாருக்கும் இந்நேரத்தில் நன்றியை தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கிறோம். பார்வையாளர்கள் உங்கள் அனைவருக்கும் இந்நிகழ்ச்சி மிகவும் பயனுள்ளதாக இருந்திருக்கும் என்று நம்புகிறோம். கூடிய விரைவில் இக்கரோனா பெருந்தொற்றை முற்றிலுமாக தோற்கடித்து வாழ்க்கை இயல்பு நிலைக்கு திரும்பும் என்று நம்புவோம். நியூ ஜெர்சி தமிழ் பேரவையின் செயலாளர் என்ற முறையில் உங்கள் அனைவருக்கும் பேரவையின் சார்பில் நன்றிகளை உரித்தாக்கி அடுத்த நிகழ்ச்சியில் சந்திப்போம் என கூறி விடைபெறுகிறேன். As a Secretary of New Jersey தமிழ் பேரவை, I would like to thank you all on behalf of the பேரவை. நன்றி, வணக்கம்.